All right, good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Thanks. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms, right? All the grandmoms, the stepmoms, the mothers-in-law, foster moms, adopted. If you're a mom of any variation. Spiritual mom?
Yeah.
Happy Mother's Day. Let's take a moment to celebrate our moms, huh? And that's what I want to do here today. I would like to celebrate and honor you guys, but we're here to read the Word, so we're going to do that as well. Here's sort of the plan. It's going to be one of my shorter messages. I want to get you ladies back out for Mother's Day activities, but I'm going to do a quick run through on the history of Mother's Day. I had never heard the story of how Mother's Day came to be, so if you've never heard it, then you're going to get to hear a brief version of that. If you've heard it 1,000 times, then don't ruin it for everybody else. And then we're going to read a Bible story about one of the great mothers in the Bible, Jochebed. If you don't know who that is, I'm sure you will know the story and who her son is, but we're going to read about her. And then I actually want to finish with, there was a pastor in England in the early 1900s who wrote a series of short stories, and one of them is called The Baby. I want to read an excerpt out of that. And then that's the plan for today, all right? Okay, so the history of Mother's Day. Here's the short version. In the late 1800s, there was a woman named Anne Reeves Jarvis, and after the Civil War in the Appalachian area, right around here, she organized something that she called Mothers Work Support Groups, and it was to help mothers who were having a hard time after the Civil War, learning new skills and taking care of their kids and teaching them and stuff like that. So this was sort of her life's work. And when she died in 1905, her daughter, Anna Jarvis, wanted to do something to memorialize her mother's work. So on the second anniversary of her mother's death in 1907, she went down to her mother's church in Virginia, where her mother was a congregant and taught Sunday school. And she went down and she decided to have a little memorial service for her mom. Well, the following year, the church decided that they wanted to also recognize their former congregant. And they decided that they were going to have a Mother's Day type service to celebrate not just her, but all the moms. And this became national news. It was all over the news, and a lot of churches thought it was a good idea. So the year after that, there were dozens of churches all over the country celebrating the moms of their congregations. And then in 1914, Woodrow Wilson, who was president at the time, made Mother's Day a national holiday. So in 9 years, less than a decade, a daughter who wanted to recognize her mom's hard work almost single-handedly created a national holiday. So it's a holiday well-deserved. We want to celebrate you ladies. We want to honor you today. The fifth commandment is honor your mother. I mean, father's tossed in there too, but honor your mother. And we want to do that for you ladies. So like I said, we're going to read a relatively short story about a woman named Jochebed. If you don't have any idea who I'm talking about, as soon as I tell you where to turn your Bibles to, you're going to know. But if you would turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 2, we're going to read about this woman. And I'm going to do what we normally do. I'm going to go ahead and read through it, and then we'll come back and we'll sort of take it verse by verse. So now, a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she had saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and dabbed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. His sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside her. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call for you a nurse of the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" The Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called on the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. And when the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses, because she said she drew him out of the water. So back in verse 1 here, we have a man of the house of Levi, and he took for himself a wife, a Levite woman. Now in Exodus chapter 6, we finally get their names. The man's name is Amram, and this is Moses' father, biological father. And he took for him a Levite woman. Her name is Jochebed, and this would be Moses' mother. The woman bore a son, who we find out later is Moses. By the way, Moses is his Egyptian name. He never gets a Hebrew name. There's speculation in the Talmud about what his Hebrew name might be, but we never actually find out what it is. So we only hear his Egyptian Arabic name, which is Moses. Now we know that this is not her first child. At this point, she has a daughter, and we'll find out later that her name is Miriam, and she's probably around 7 years old. But she also had another son, who's 3 years older than Moses, Aaron. Now then we see that when she saw that the child was fine, she hid him. Now some of your translations might say when she saw that he was special, or when she saw that he was beautiful, she decided to hide him. But I don't think that this is the special and beautiful that we all feel when we first see a child, especially our first child. And I know you guys, especially you women, you know this feeling. The baby comes out, and you get to look at them for the first time, and everything changes. You will give up everything for them. I know your mothers especially, right? You give up your time, your energy, maybe your friendships, your bodies, and you give all those things up so this beautiful, special thing can thrive. But the Hebrew word here, it means a little bit more than that. All right, the Hebrew word that is being translated into fine is tawab. And if you really want to wrap your head around its meaning, it's the same word that God uses during creation when he looks upon his work and he says that it was good. It was tawab. So it's not just a physical or emotional thing, there's a spiritual aspect to it. She knew that Moses had a purpose. She knew that God would use him. And so when she looked upon him, almost like when God looked upon his creation, she knew that he was good, he was tawab. So she hid him for 3 months. Now the reason why she hid him, we found out in chapter 1, if you go back and read it. There's a new Pharaoh, and this new Pharaoh doesn't have the same relationship with the Hebrews that the previous Pharaoh did. So he's a little worried that their population is going to grow and that they might revolt. So he has ordered that all Hebrew male children should be killed. So Jochebed hiding Moses for 3 months is this act of courageous, it's like this, her life could be in danger if they were found out. So she put her own life aside for the sake of her baby boy, and she hid him against what Pharaoh might want to do to him. And then it says, when she could hide him no longer, she made for him a basket of bulrushes and dabbed it with bitumen. This is it's a papyrus basket, and she waterproofed it with tar. That's essentially what's happening here. She waterproofed it with tar. But again, we get this callback to Genesis and creation, because the word for basket being translated here is tavah, and it's the same word that's used for Noah's ark. So she built him an ark. So then we see that his sister, Miriam, stood at a distance because she wanted to know what would be done to him. Now, in Exodus 15, Miriam is referred to as a prophetess. And perhaps that's what's going on here. Maybe she knew the significance of this moment. Maybe she knew that something special was going to happen. Or maybe she just wanted to know what was going to happen to her baby brother. But she was there at the perfect time for this to take place. So then we see that the daughter of Pharaoh has come down to bathe. We never get Pharaoh's daughter's name. As a matter of fact, we never get Pharaoh's name. It is commonly thought that the Pharaoh being referred to here would be King Ramses II, and he had at least 59 daughters, 45 of whom we actually have recorded names for. So we don't know which one of those 45 this young girl is, but she's down and she's bathing in the Nile, and this wouldn't have been uncommon for commoners to bathe in the Nile, but it would be very uncommon for a princess to be caught bathing in public. So we don't know why the princess is bathing in the Nile. This is something that she wouldn't normally do. Perhaps, the 40 bathrooms in the palace were being taken up by her 45 sisters, and she had nowhere else to go. But it also shows how God's timing is working. On the day that Jochebed placed Moses in the reeds, the day that his sister happened to be waiting there, is the day that she would have to utilize the Nile to bathe. So then we see that she opens it, and she beholds that the baby's crying, and she takes pity upon him. Now, this in and of itself is significant. Her father has decreed that these children should all be killed. She could have a very different point of view. She could just kill the baby or hand the baby off for someone else to kill him. But she takes pity on the baby. And then Miriam, seeing that opportunity, she jumps up and she goes, hey, by the way, I happen to know a woman in milk right now. I could probably run and get her for you if you just wanted to, have somebody to nurse her. Very convenient. But Pharaoh's daughter takes her up on it and says, yeah, go get her. So now you have to imagine Jochebed has placed Moses in the reeds. She's probably back at the house crying her brains out. She had just given up her baby. She has no idea what happened to him. And her daughter runs in and says, Mom, we gotta go. Pharaoh's about to give you your baby back. Pharaoh's daughter's going to give you your baby back. So they run in, and Pharaoh's daughter says, I want you to take this child away and nurse him for me, but not only that, I will give you your wages. That'll be important in a second. But God's provision is written all over this story. The day that Jochebed places Moses in the Nile, his sister followed and watched. Pharaoh's daughter came down for an unusual reason. She took pity upon the baby, which maybe 48 of the other daughters wouldn't have. And then she is receptive to Miriam, who is a Hebrew 7-year-old girl. And she goes, I'm going to do what this little girl is saying. And then she hands the baby back to Jochebed with the promise to pay for her to care for her own baby. And the reason why that shouldn't be overlooked is you have to remember, Jochebed is a slave. The Hebrew women were slaves in this society. So she would have had other things that she should be attending to. But God wanted her primary job to be raising Moses. So not only is he giving Moses back to her, but taking care of all other responsibilities. We're going to pay your wages. Now, weaning age would have been between 2 and 3 at this time, culturally. So this gave her time to teach Moses all the history of the Hebrews up until this point. Now, Jochebed's father was Levi, and that would make her grandfather Jacob. So imagine her spending those 2 years telling stories about their ancestors, how God used them in the promises that he made to them. How many times have you mothers told stories about your parents and your grandparents and your traditions pouring into your children? She poured into Moses for these 2 to 3 years. And when the time came, she brought him to the princess and sent Moses on his mission, a mission that would change the world, a mission that would free the Jews, that would bring them the law and the priesthood, and that would lead them to the promised land. And that's because when God wants to change the world, he sends a baby. Now that's going to bring me to this excerpt that I want to read for you. F.W. Boreham, an English preacher, he wrote a book in 1914, so the same year that Woodrow Wilson made Mother's Day a national holiday. It's a series of short stories, and the book is called The Mountains in the Mist. And the 7th of these short stories is titled The Baby. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's not really long, but there's a part here that I think is really good for today. So The Baby by F.W. Boreham. It never occurs to us, as we confuse our minds with the world's worries and the world's woes, that the baby in its swaddling clothes is really the way out. A century ago, for example, men were following with bated breath the march of Napoleon and waiting with feverish impatience for the latest news of war. And all the while, in their homes, babies were being born. But no one could think about babies. Everyone was thinking about battles. It was another case of the historian and the hippopotamus. For let us look at some of those babies. Why, in 1 year, lying midway between Trafalgar and Waterloo, these are 2 battles of Napoleon 10 years apart. So between these two battles, there stole into the world a host of heroes. During that 1 year, in 1809, Mr. Gladstone was born at Liverpool. Alfred Tennyson was born at Somersby Rectory. And Oliver Wendell Holmes made his first appearance in Massachusetts. And on the very same day of that very same year, Abraham Lincoln drew his first breath at Old Kentucky. And music was enriched by the advent of Frédéric Chopin at Warsaw and Felix Mendelssohn at Hamburg. Within the same year, too, Samuel Morley was born at Homerton and Edward Fitzgerald Woodbridge. Elizabeth Barrett Browning at Durham and Frances Kemble in London. But nobody thought of the babies. Everybody was thinking of battles. Yet viewing that age in the truer perspective which the distance of hundreds of years enables us to command, we might well ask ourselves which of the battles of 1809 mattered more than the babies of 1809. The babies of 1809. Mr. Gladstone would go on to become a 4-term British Prime Minister. He was known for his reforms to the justice system and to education. And he was the only prime minister to ever serve 4 non-consecutive terms. Alfred Tennyson would go on to become a world-famous poet, known for writing in memoriam of AHH, The Charge of Light and Brigade, and The Crossing Bar. Oliver Wendell Holmes would go on to become an American Supreme Court justice, known for being a champion of free speech and judicial restraint. Abraham Lincoln would go on to become president and successfully end slavery in this country. Frédéric Chopin would go on to become a world-famous composer and a pianist whose songs you would most certainly recognize even if you can't think of any right now. So why were these babies so important? Because when a wrong needs righting, or a work needs doing, a truth needs preaching, or a continent needs opening, God sends a baby into the world to do it. That's why long, long ago, a baby was born in Egypt and later another in Bethlehem. When wrongs need righting, God sends a baby to do it, and he entrusts those babies with you mothers. Worship team, you guys can come back up. Sons and daughters, honor your mother. It's the 5th commandment, and it's the first commandment with the promise. Honor your father and mother so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy a long life. So honor your mothers, your grandmothers, your stepmothers, your mothers-in-law. God saw fit for you to be raised by them, to be cared for by them, to be taught by them, to be disciplined by them, but most importantly, to be loved by them. To the mothers, you ladies are killing it. You're doing great. We thank you. We honor you. We cherish you. We love you, and we thank God for giving us to you. So let's thank him together with one more worship song. Sons and daughters, thank him for giving you to your mother. And mothers, thank him for entrusting you to be a mother. If you want someone to pray with, the prayer team will be in the back, but let's worship.